want to live a life with no regrets? What would that even look like? I know this is something that people live with, is they live with regrets and what could have happened, what should have happened. And sometimes these are regrets of commission, meaning this is something that I did, and sometimes it's regrets of omission. And anytime I hear about what people's regrets are, it's almost always what they didn't do. Sometimes it is the things that they did, but a lot of times at the end of people's lives, it's, man, I wish I would have done this, but I didn't do it. There's a book I read over Christmas break called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I know this resonated with a lot of people. It resonated with me. Over 8 million people read this book alone. But the 5 regrets of the dying, and I know we covered a couple of them, but I want to just give a synopsis of the top 5 today. But number 1 is this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I, like maybe you, I used to care way too much about what people thought about me. I was a staff pastor for well over a decade at a couple different churches here in DFW. And there was a mold, at both places. And anytime you're at an organization or a campus or a church, there's going to be a vision and a commonality and a mold to stick. But I remember one place in particular, and I've heard this at a lot of different spots, but it's like you had to be a certain way. You had to dress a certain way. You had to come across a certain way. It could be kind of political. You had to rub shoulders with this person and make sure that you were seen. And that wasn't really the type of environment, looking back, that I wanted to be a part of. But at the time, I was just consumed with it. And I felt like I had to be a version of myself that I didn't want to be, that wasn't true to who I was. And I remember making different transitions in my life and being in more places where I could be the full expression of myself, and even launching this church where I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to be true to who I am. And I think a lot of people live in their life trying to their aim is to please others. And they think if I please others, then I'm going to be pleased. But the trap is that if you live to please other people, you are never pleased because you're not being you. So don't let that be regret number 1 at the end of your life. The Apostle Paul said it like this. He says to make it your primary aim to please God. And when you please God, believe it or not, you're actually becoming the full expression of who God created you to be, right? He's not asking, God didn't call you to be somebody else. He called you to be you. The second regret is this: I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Wish I hadn't worked so hard. You know, this is nuanced because work is a good thing. God created work. God worked. Scripture says that God worked 6 days whenever he created creation, and then he took a day off. Like, he gave us a model to follow, and I think sometimes maybe people don't want to work, or they're opting for a 3-day work week or a 4-day work week, and I guess there's discussion there for whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I think work is a good thing. Where I think work can be too much is when it starts to replace your family. So you have to have the mindset that my family is my first ministry. I'm not going to do something at work that's going to cause my family relationship to suffer. Right? When I say family relationship, I'm not talking about extended family or parents or anything like that. I'm talking about if you're at home, wherever home is for you, right? And if you're married, your spouse. If you have kids, your kids. If you're single, then you have a little bit more leeway on this. But you don't want to get to the end of your life and think, man, I work too much. I work so much at the expense of my friends, my family. I really never got involved in my church. I never got involved in my community, and I would work so much, and I'd come home, and I didn't even know anybody in my neighborhood. And I just came home, and I clicked that button, and the garage door opened, and I went in, and I went back, and I'm so tired from my long day at work, and I get home at 6:30, and I make a quick dinner, and I watch Netflix for 3 hours, and then I just repeat that, right? If you keep doing that enough days in a row, then your life's over. And you don't want to be at the end of your life thinking, man, why did I do all that? Like, for what? Like, you know? So I say all that to say, really evaluate what you want to do with your time, because time is the piece right there. And a lot of us spend so much time working that our time evaporates. So if you're going to work on something meaningful. Work on something that you care about. Regret number 3. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Man, this is a real one, right? Especially like when you're a guy reading it, like, my feelings? Like, what about my feelings? You know, when it comes to your feelings, your emotions, I remember when I was younger, I used to pride myself on being a little stoic and disciplined and all those things. And I guess I've kind of do some of that now. But I remember when I was younger, I used to joke to a mentor in my life. I said that I had no emotions. And she had to remind me, like, Brandon, emotions are part of how God made you. You know, when you think about it, we are all a 3-part being. So I am a spirit. I live in a body. This is what you see. But I have a soul. And a soul is what we're talking about here. It's your mind, your will, and your emotions. And emotions is the feeling of life, right? It's the good things. It's the hard times. It's the bad times. It's the struggle, but it's the pleasure at the same time. I think so many times people will guard themselves off on their emotional piece and their emotional part of them because they've experienced the bad times. They're like, you know what, if I just don't talk about my feelings enough or too much, then I won't have to go down that hard road of really finding out who I really am and why this bothers me so much. And what I would encourage you in is, a lot of people, when it comes to their emotions, they will numb their feelings. Now, people numb their feelings and their emotions with a drink at the end of the day, or maybe a few drinks. They numb it with a lot of TV time. They numb it with video games. They numb it with working out. They numb it with sexual pleasure. Whatever it might be, they numb it. Can I encourage you? Stop numbing it. Stop. You know, everybody has vices. I've had vices. I remember there were times in my life I was like, you know what? I have to learn how to cope with anxiety or stress in different ways. And I remember I just started letting myself feel it every day. And I noticed the more I stopped coping and I just started dealing with it, the less of any of that stuff I even had. Why is that? Because I accepted me for me. I knew who I was. I knew how I was hardwired. And I'm like, you know what? When I go into these circumstances, I usually feel this way. And I just became okay with it. And I started not just visualizing the best thing that could happen, but I also visualized, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I didn't run with it. And whenever I actually visualized and actually verbalized what's the worst thing that could happen, I was like, you know what? I actually live at the end of both days. I'll be fine, right? And then everything becomes so much easier. So don't bottleneck your feelings. Have the courage to express your feelings to the people in your lives. Number 4, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I had a friend's mom years ago. She told me this. She said, Brandon, there's 3 types of friends. There's friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for a life. She said, Brandon, not everybody's all 3, or not everybody's a friend for a lifetime, but it's friends for a season. And you know, that friend was a friend for a season. It's funny that the mom even said that. Friends for a reason, a season, and a life. You know, and there's, for a lot of us, and I know for me, there's a lot of friends that I've had that I don't really talk to that much anymore. And it's not that anything bad happened. It's just that there's different layers and seasons and levels of life. But then there are friends of mine that I've known for a really long time that I do keep in touch with. And maybe we don't go to the same church anymore, or we don't work at the same place anymore, or we don't live in the same neighborhood. But there's certain friends in your life, this is where I want to encourage you so you don't have this regret. There's friends in your life that you have that believe in you, that see you, and they accept you. Those are the friends you want to keep. You don't want to let those ones go. So make sure and be mindful, be intentional, be relational, send that text, pray for them, reach out to them, support them. Be a friend to those in your life. The last regret is I wish I had let myself be happier. You know, happiness is a perspective. A lot of us think that happiness is a circumstance, that happiness is what happens when I have enough money in my bank account. Happiness is what happens when I have somebody of the opposite sex that wants to be in a relationship with me. That happiness is when I'm perfectly healthy, when I have a lot of energy and I just feel really good. Or happiness is when I live in the house that I dreamed of. That's happiness. But you know, there's people all around the world that experience what you consider to be a happy circumstance, and they're empty. They're empty because they had the things they dreamed about and they realize, oh wow, the circumstance didn't make me happy. What makes you happy is the perspective, is the gratitude. See, there's something that I do at the beginning and the end of a lot of days where I actually examine my life and I ask a series of questions. And a couple of the questions as it relates to this, and I ask myself, what am I happy about today? What am I happy about? And you know, if I don't ask myself that question, I'm not naturally like happy-go-lucky. I have to remember, man, what am I happy about right now? What am I grateful for? Then I ask myself, what am I excited about today that's different than yesterday? And because I'm evaluating that and examining my life, I can actually have those things. So how I want to end this time so that you don't have regrets is that you examine your life. And a lot of people don't examine their lives because they're afraid they may not like what they find. But that doesn't have to be you. And your life isn't going to be as scary as you think it is when you evaluate it. Because you're going to see maybe the person that you've been avoiding the whole time. You. And guess what? When you look at you, you're not going to be alone. Because God's with you. And when you walk in life with God by your side, you don't have to have regrets. But you have to be intentional to live a meaningful life. God bless. We'll see you next time.